When you're setting out to start something up, make sure that it aligns with what you want to do, with how you want to work, and also what your kind of moral purpose is. Make sure that people out there know that you exist, that you know your stuff about your specialist areas. I write about those, make sure that my search engine optimization, SEOs, are where they should be, because I want to be on the first page of Google when someone searches for whatever it is. If you truly have an idea that is something that you love, then it is just so rewarding.
This is the Education Business Podcast for all founders and business owners in the education sector. This podcast is for you if you have an education business or you're thinking about starting one. That could be tutoring, publishing, holiday clubs. It really doesn't matter. You're in business and you're also in education. But most of all, you're focused on improving outcomes for children in the way you know best, through your business. I'm Claire Riley, co-founder of educational resources website Classroom Secrets, and I'll be sharing how to make your education business bigger, better, and have more impact through my own experiences and also the conversations I have with other founders and business owners in education. The Education Business Podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets, helping you to support your children's learning. Aidan, welcome to the Education Business Podcast. We've met before because you live in a neighbouring town, but it's great to have you on the podcast so that everybody can hear your story. So what is your story? How did you get into teaching? And then how did that lead you to start your own business in education?
Hi Claire, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's really good to be here, and yeah, I've listened to loads of the episodes in the past and have taken lots of inspiration from your advice around setting up a business. So it's great to be able to give back a little bit and share some of my experiences too. So my journey into education business started with me being a teacher. Before that, I was a kid at school who didn't know what to do. I was at a grammar school, and the route was you go to uni and then you get a job. So I was looking around for a course to do, and loads of people in my life suggested, well, you're really good with kids, so why don't you train to be a teacher? And that's just what I decided to do. I'm really thankful that that worked out, that I really enjoyed the teaching course. I did 4 years with an art degree as well. Really enjoyed that. And I did okay with it as well. I got in trouble for being disorganised with my folders and things like that. But in terms of being in the classroom with the children, that was all good. So I got a job as a teacher. I actually trained as Key Stage 1 teacher, but I ended up teaching in Year 3, then Year 5, then Year 4, then Year 6, over a number of years and a number of different schools. I became an assistant head. I was a lead practitioner across our academy trust, and then I became a deputy head at one of the other schools in the trust. So it was, if we just rewind a little bit, it was when I became an assistant head that I really started to think about teaching, and I really started to read up about teaching, to start to follow research and theory, and to read people's blogs and articles and things like that, to learn a bit more about the art and science of teaching. And that was particularly because I'd moved to an inner city school in Bradford where we had some real challenges. They'd had kind of a terrible Ofsted, and then it was an all new leadership team, and we really needed to turn things around. So I was looking for any inspiration, any information, anywhere to kind of help the teachers and ultimately help the pupils at that school. And that just really got me into teaching in a way that I hadn't for perhaps the previous, 8 years or something like that. And that year I also did a leadership course with what is now Ambition, and I just loved it. I just geeked out over it all. And I started writing my own blog, and this is probably the true start of me setting up an education business. I wrote my own blog. I shared it. I joined Twitter as it was and was sharing my blog posts. They were really well received. Teachers were finding them really useful. Lots and lots around reading, because it was the time of the infamous 2016 reading paper with the warthogs milling around in bewilderment and so on. And yeah, I started to share my ideas. People liked them. I had requests for giving talks, writing books, helping out at other people's schools, none of which I could really do because I was so busy at my own school. Then the next step was, as I said, I became the lead practitioner for primary across our academy. And that just gave me a taste of working with different schools, different people on different problems, I suppose. Problem solving, I kind of think, is what I do really well, and as well as working with other people to do that. So that gave me a little taste of what I do now, which I haven't actually said. I'm an education consultant, and yeah, that made me feel like that's something that I really want to do. I still want to work in education. I love education. I love everything about it, really, and I particularly love working with other people on it. I was a deputy then for a bit, which was really good because it gave me loads more experience and skills, which I'm now able to draw on in my business. And then eventually I stepped away from the deputy role because the time just seemed right. There was lots of things that came together that we might explore a little bit that just meant that the time was right for me to go it alone. And I made a clean break, one step. Before Christmas, I was working full-time in a primary school as a deputy head. And then after Christmas, I was full-time as an education consultant, working with schools, particularly on curriculum, but also on matters of pedagogy, how you deliver that curriculum in the classroom. And over the years that I've been doing that, which is nearly 4 years now, I have done all sorts of things really that have drawn on my experiences, both as a teacher and as a school leader.
Do you know what I love about entrepreneurship? How we can really drill into what it is we really love and go after it. But not only that, everybody's experiences and every person's passions are different. And you could say, this is the Education Business Podcast. Surely we've all got the same passion. But no, we don't. You've expressed your love for really understanding the art of teaching, and not everyone has that passion. And this is why I love building a team as well, because I love to build a team of people who have different interests and different passions and bring them together. So I just really enjoyed listening to your story. Now, you did mention basically everything aligned for you to make that final shift. So let's go into that then. How did that come about?
Yeah, so maybe aligned was the wrong word, because I think in some ways we engineered some of that alignment. But I think there were some events that happened that kind of led to me setting up my business as an independent education consultant. So I think the first thing to do is probably go back to something I said in the last answer about the reason why I wanted to do it. I had that taste of it through doing my blog, through being the lead practitioner, and it was definitely something I wanted to pursue. I was a deputy head at the time, and I knew that I definitely didn't want to pursue headship. As a deputy head, I had like the teaching and learning role, the curriculum role. I actually led a lot of the subjects in that role as well, before handing them all over when I did leave. And so there was this desire to do the kind of education consulting thing, and that was the first thing. Then we hit COVID, and I was really thankful that I hadn't made the jump before, because I saw a lot of education consultants and other people, independent people within education, really struggling. So I thought I've made a good decision there by not doing it earlier. And I think also carrying on for a little bit longer in the school-based role, getting through COVID, actually gave me lots more experience, which I still am able to draw on to this day. So I'm really thankful, really, that I held on. during COVID, and this is where I'm just going to have to be really honest, during COVID, one of my daughters, I've got 3 daughters, one of them went into crisis. It was actually after the schools went back, and because I was a teacher, I was a key worker, my children went back to school. They went back to school and it was great. They had these like small class sizes and things were fine. But then when all the other children came back to school, and off the back of all of the weirdness that went on during COVID, my daughter went into crisis. And it was then that after quite a few years of maybe wondering a little bit, we really pursued what was going on. Why did she have this reaction to everything that had happened? And eventually we found out that she is autistic, and we got the diagnosis and so on. And that was a really difficult time in our lives. And I won't go into all the details of that. Some people will understand it. Some people will have been there. Others may have friends who've had these experiences. But suffice to say, it was a very difficult period. For me as well, COVID was difficult, as it was for many, not just having COVID, but being isolated, still going into work. I was the one who signed on the dotted line to say that for our school, we would provide education for pupils. That was basically a legal thing. So I had this massive weight of responsibility that saw me doing all manner of things to try and make sure that our children at our school still got a really good deal. And there was other situations, I think, post-COVID when we came back that were really difficult, lots of difficult situations with parents. One particular one where they recorded a meeting that I had and with some parents who were making a complaint, and then sent it out on local community WhatsApp groups and things like that. I hadn't done anything wrong, and actually parents contacted us to say, do you know that this recording is going round? We don't think he says anything wrong. We really support you, but this is happening. So there were just a lot of things that came together, and I actually ended up taking time off, being signed off sick. The doctors said it was like combined anxiety and depression. I still don't think it was because of the job. I think it was because of trying to split myself between home and work with all the difficult things that were going on at home. And I just think I did not have the capacity for that. And I think that was then a catalyst that actually we needed to change the pace of life. We needed to rebalance things. I needed to be around more for the kids. It actually turns out that my youngest daughter is autistic too, and at the time we just thought she's just copying behaviours from her older sister, but as time has gone on, it's turned out that she is autistic too. So we've got lots of neurodivergency, and whilst there's so many positives to that, there are lots of difficulties, lots of adaptations that need to be made in life. So that was a catalyst, really, those things coming together. The third thing is that my wife, 10 years ago now, had started a bakery business from home, and the idea was that it would be some part-time work once the children were all at school, but that it would be flexible, and so she could still be a mum, still do things at home. And we made the decision really as a couple that we were going to try and rebalance things a little bit so that I was working, but also my wife, Beck, could work. She could do more with the bakery business because it was growing, it was being successful. And an opportunity came about for us to actually open a physical shop in our town of Keighley. That opportunity didn't actually materialise because the building work never got finished. It still isn't finished now, but it gave us the kind of taste of the idea, and we eventually did get another building really nearby on kind of one of the main shopping streets, and we were working at the point at which I went independent and left school, set up my education business. we were working towards opening that shop. So we knew that if we were going to have a shop and Beck, my wife, was going to be spending lots of time on that venture, there would need to be more of my time given over to the family and to general home life. So we kind of rebalanced things. We went from me working full time, Beck working part time, but from home very flexibly, to something a bit more balanced, which is what we have now. So we opened the bakery business, and gradually over time, I've had various involvement in that. Sometimes I'm in there on the counter, sometimes I'm delivering a cake, setting it up, stacking it, putting the flowers on and things like that. Other times I'm working on spreadsheets and automated systems for ordering, and nearly always on a daily basis, Beck and I are having those conversations that you have when you own a family business about what needs to happen next. Lots of advice on team leadership based on my experience of leadership in schools and things like that. So yeah, I think it was those three things: my children's kind of mental health and autism diagnoses, my own mental health around coping with school and life, and also the bakery business becoming a bigger part of our lives, that kind of enabled me to then chase that dream, chase that desire, start doing that thing that I'd wanted to do.
Do you teach children as part of your business offering? Have you considered using resources from Classroom Secrets? At Classroom Secrets, we're always adding new resources for a range of subjects, and we're keen to hear your suggestions for resources too. We know that you didn't go into business to work more hours than you did in the classroom. You went into business to give you freedom. Let us help with that. Visit classroomsecrets.co.uk to sign up. Aidan, you've been through a lot, and I just wanted to thank you for sharing the details, because it's in the details of stories that we can relate, isn't it? And there'll be lots of entrepreneurs listening who have had the number of things to deal with as you, or maybe some of the situations that they found themselves in have been the same. It's been the same for us. We've had difficult juggles at all stages of business, but especially with family, because you build a business for your family and you want to make sure that they get the best. I do think, though, I always try and remember how lucky we are. So right now, Ed has broken his patella. It happened a few days ago. And as much as it's kind of frustrating for both of us in many ways, as seen as he's had a lot of knee injuries actually, but I said to him, it could be a lot worse. You could have a manual job, but you don't. You don't have a manual job, and we work in the same company. So it's our company that is really useful in this situation. We're very, very blessed. So I think it's brilliant that you're using business to be able to balance those things a bit better and work it around your home life as well. So you've had all of these difficult experiences. How are they serving you now?
Well, before I answer that, get well soon, Ed. Hope that situation gets sorted and that he heals well. How is it serving me? That's a really good question. And I feel like it's something that I've not really considered before. So thanks for asking me that, because I think it's probably really helpful to think that through. So I think first and foremost, I think our circumstances, our experiences in life have really developed my empathy for all, for others. We've had those situations out and about when people have judged us and said things to us, and I know that they don't know what's going on. They don't have the full story, and I think it's just made me approach everyone in such a different way. So when I'm working with schools, I try to just have a very empathetic outlook. I don't make assumptions. I try to understand why they're in the situation they're in without being judgmental, really. And I think that really impacts I hope it impacts how I come across to people and the way that I work with people, which is so much to do with building relationships really quickly, building an understanding of a school's context really quickly, and trying to help them to make the next steps to improve what they're doing. I think as well, whilst I don't think having children with special needs has made me a SEND expert, I am definitely experienced in a particular aspect of SEND, including, mainly from a parent's point of view, but including how we've had to work with their schools over the years to help to accommodate them. And I think that really impacts on most of the things I work on with schools. So whilst I might not necessarily be working specifically on SEND provision, I think it's always there in my mind, but how will this impact on children who might struggle with this approach, or how might we make this more accessible, and so on. So I think it really colours a lot of the work I do, even when it's non-SEND specific. And I think it just gives me that drive to really improve the school experience for all pupils. And where some schools might not just be thinking of that at that moment, it's something that I can bring to the table. I think in terms of how it's serving my business in other ways, I think it's given me a broader set of success indicators. So I don't only think, right, that the way that I define success in my business is solely based on money. It's based on other things as well. So yes, I am trying to earn some money, trying to support my family, but at the same time, I'm also trying to carve out time for my family. I'm trying to make myself more available for my family. And I think that's a really freeing perspective to have, that not all of your success indicators have to be monetary, have to be economic, that there are so many other ways which mean you are being successful in business, and particularly in my case, those ones relating to my family. So I think that's a really massive way that those experiences serve my business. It's a whole mindset change from work being about making money to work being about allowing you certain freedoms. Like you were saying with you and Ed, we can be much more flexible now, both in matters relating to our children, but also just in life in general, as to, when we take a bit of time out, when we do certain things and so on. So yeah, it really does serve my business in particular ways. So I'm really thankful you asked that question.
Well, I'm always happy to be here for a coaching question to make you think. It's funny, because that point you made about not assuming things and not judging people, this is what I say a lot. Do not assume anything. When we tell the team things, don't assume that they've remembered what we even mean. When we sell to customers, don't assume that they actually know. But it's more than that as well. I think as a business owner, you really do experience life faster in some ways. So you've got all your own personal experiences like you've shared, but then you've got all the interactions with people who are your customers, but also, at the end of the day, you become more known because you're trying to build a brand. And there was a post on LinkedIn recently, actually, and I commented, and it was around leadership. And I said, one of the things I find hard about leadership is people will know 10% of the story because that's what they can know, but they'll comment on it as if they know 100%. And it really does make you think differently. One of the things that I think is most interesting, and something I'm considering a lot at the moment, is just around, so I'm a middle-aged person now. I think it depends how long I live till. If I live to 100, then I'm middle-aged at 50. I'm 41. But anyway, let's imagine I'm middle-aged, and because I have been in business, for 12 years at Classroom Secrets. Now, I did have businesses before that. I've learned a lot of things, and I've had to have a lot of leadership lessons. And as I said, you experience life faster. You get to a point where you've kind of done so much personal development and you've experienced so many things that you can have people in your life who are not in business, who don't really have the same outlook as you. And it can be quite interesting because you kind of expect that older people will be wise and have wisdom. But what I've learned is that's not necessarily the case. And a lot of that wisdom is exactly what you've said about not assuming things and not putting people in a box or having expectations of people just because they're your own. And I just think it's a really interesting thing that's either only just starting to happen or has happened for ages. And I'm just sort of stepping into that world, which is probably really what it is. And just to talk about your version of success is my version of success. And I think that's the new version of success because that's Ed's version of success. And I suppose what you could say if you go back, I don't know, probably only 30 years, a goal for a woman could have been get a job that fits within school hours and you're winning. And for a man, get a job that works loads and loads of hours and brings in lots and lots of money. And some people still have that mindset and that expectation of gender roles. And obviously we're not living that, you're not living that. And I think that is interesting. So for Ed, he's the same as you. He wants to be around. He wants to be able to work within school hours and all that kind of thing. And he's kind of pushing a boundary, really, still in society, I think, because it is different. There isn't an expectation that we should try and be flexible with our families, but it's one I really, really support because obviously we're doing it as well. So you're closer to the startup journey than I am. If somebody was in school now and maybe they're an early stage founder or they're wanting to start a business, what do you think they need to get clear on before they make that jump?
So I think going back to that thing about success indicators, I think that's probably the first thing that I would start with. So what is it going to look like for you to have succeeded in setting up your education business? What are the markers for that success that you're going to be looking for? Because I think the temptation is when you do get going that you kind of narrow your view on what success means. So you might just be, like we've said earlier, you might just be really focusing on, have I made enough money? Which is obviously really important, but it's small steps. When you set up an education business, you're starting a journey and you need to understand what those markers are, like as milestones, really. So it could be, well, did you get to spend more time with your children this week? It could be, did you manage to reduce the number of hours? It could be, did you have one phone call that could eventually lead to some work? Did you do one social media post that attracted a certain amount of attention? It's those small things, I think, that help you to see that although you might not be at your very end goal where you're earning a really comfortable living, you don't want for anything, you're also balancing your family life, like you can see that you're on your way to that. And that's the other thing then that I would say is to set those more long-term goals. What do you want this to look like in the long term so that you can work towards those? I think a lot of the time in kind of small business and working for yourself, you can try to just do lots of things, but you're just kind of throwing things at the wall to see if they stick. You're trying to do things actually that might not be pulling in the direction of where you want to go, but you're doing things because you feel like you need to be doing things. So I think just setting those goals, having those aims, both short term, long term, and then the milestones in between, helps you to really make sure that the things you do are working towards that eventual goal. And it also helps you to decide, well, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say no to that. Some work you take because you might just need the money in that moment in time. Other times you might have to say, actually, I won't take that work because I need the time to work on my business so that it's where I want it to be. But then, yeah, it's all balanced out by if you're needing to earn money to keep your family in a warm home and with lovely food and all that sort of thing, it does have to balance out with that. The other thing I would say is just really work out how you are going to make yourself known. I don't know the numbers on this, but I feel it seems like the last few years has seen an explosion in small education businesses started by people coming out of working in schools but wanting to continue to work in education. So I think it's just about how you're going to make yourself known, how are you going to position yourself as somebody who people will want to work with. probably at this stage in the potentially saturated market, it's about knowing what your niche is and starting to get yourself known for that. So looking for ways to make sure that people out there know that you exist, that you know your stuff about your specialist areas, and that you're going to be the one they come to. Coupled to that, I think it's really making sure that when people Google stuff, because people still Google stuff, that's where I think most of my work comes from. Having my website with my blog posts where I've written about those things that I'm really interested in, the things I'm passionate about, the things that I want to work with schools on. I write about those, make sure that my search engine optimization, SEOs, are where they should be, because I want to be on the first page of Google when someone searches for whatever it is. So for me, often it's things to do with working with pupils at greater depth, increasingly continuous provision in Key Stage 2, previously lots of work with subject leaders. So I'm making sure that I am coming up on Google and that people can see that I have put my expertise out there so that I'm the one they want. So yeah, make sure that you know how you're going to make yourself known, make sure that you know what you're going to be known for in a busy, crowded market.
Great points. It is more difficult than it used to be, I think, to get people's attention, because there are so many people trying to get the attention of schools and senior leaders and teachers, and we're all competing for that. And I also think, teachers and school leaders are fed up of that as well, and you can see why, because we're all competing for the attention. So that's a great point. And your first point, just to add, I think it's worth just saying that you also need to check in on that measure of success as well, because what can happen is you can have in your mind, right, my measure of success is that I want to spend more time with my family, and then you can achieve that but not really remember to appreciate it maybe as much as you can, and then you're following other people, maybe business leaders in different spaces, and then you get fixated on what they find important. That could be money, for example, and then you find yourself chasing after that more and not actually fulfilling what you wanted, even though you've got your measure of success. And so there is a case for that. And you know what? As you progress and you do get those things, if you want to spend more time with your family and you get there, you also need to check in on, right, what extra do I want? Because when we're not growing and we're not trying to improve things and chase after something else, we get bored and then we feel like we lose our purpose. So that is just something to think about as well. Aidan, I just wanted to say thank you so much. In your mind, what have we not talked about that we should have talked about that education business owners should know about?
Well, thanks for having me, Claire. It's been a real pleasure. I think to wrap things up, I would just perhaps want to add to the positivity of some of the things we've said today, just to balance out some of the things we've said, perhaps about how difficult sometimes running an education business can be. And I think it goes back to that beginning point where you have to think about what you want to achieve. And I think if you truly choose a business, if you truly have an idea that is something that you love, then it is just so rewarding. So for me, I absolutely love going to different schools, working with different people, hearing what problems and things that schools are working on, and then working alongside them collaboratively to come up with solutions. I really like thinking on my feet. I really like sometimes not even knowing exactly how the problem's going to be solved when for example, when I'm on the train on the way there or in the car, and just I love how it feels at the end of the day when we've really solved the problem. We've put some things in place. We've got people in position ready to continue that piece of work. The people who I've worked with are feeling really positive. They feel like they've had a breakthrough. I just love that and I thrive off that. And it's what I set out to do. And when I achieve that, it just feels so good. So I think, yeah, make sure that you're doing something you love and make sure that you are able to work in a way that you really enjoy as well. There are some jobs I've done that aren't exactly my favourite way of working. Sometimes they're necessary because it's exposure or it's a paycheck, but as much as possible and more, I try to encourage people to work in the way that I know I work best, and therefore the way that is going to get them the most for their money. And so, yeah, do something you love. Make sure that it's something that really, really fits who you are. And also, going back to the idea of purpose, I still, when I left school, I still wanted to make a difference to children in children's lives. I still wanted to make a difference to schools, and that is what all my work should do. I should never feel like, well, that's not really having an impact on children, because that's not what my kind of mission is. It's not what my moral purpose is. So I think that as well, when you're setting out to start something up, make sure that it aligns with what you want to do, with how you want to work, and also what your kind of moral purpose is.
I love that, Aidan. Follow what you love. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets. To find more resources to grow your business, visit classroomsecrets.co.uk.